Okay, welcome to another episode of A Podcast, and your host Stephen Maxted, as always. And we have a very inspirational guest on today, Tahira Jamani with The Chain Reaction, and we had a family introduction from my cousin,
Yeah.
local to Calgary, and friends with you, and right away just kind of hit it off in conversation, talking business, and we got you on right away, and excited to have you on here to chat about where you've been, what you're doing, where you're headed ultimately. But maybe give the listener a little insight to introduce yourself and what you're up to these days. Some of this will be new information for me too. So
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a mindfulness and emotional intelligence trainer and facilitator. Kind of a whole story of how I got here. Essentially, right now I'm doing one-on-one coaching with clients and also workplace coaching as well, and workshops on building in emotional intelligence into their day-to-day life so that we can be less stressed, more productive, healthier, happier at work. Was kind of birthed out of my journey of hitting burnout, which happened 10 years ago. And we can get a little bit more into that when we get into that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's awesome. And I think one of the first things that I kind of like open up a dialogue is some of the companies that I've worked with in the past have sent us for, maybe I don't even know if I said this actually, I was thinking it for sure, has sent us for trainings on different like personality types. And that's kind of just like I would call it the tip of the iceberg, I think, for where you go with things. I've kind of made some assumptions about, what you might be touching on in here. Definitely want to hear more from you than my story. But I thought that those trainings that we'd gone for though were incredibly helpful for mostly like the team and interacting around how to manage each other. I mean, like the introspective piece is nice to like understand, but then, what was it, like the disc test or something like that? I know I've done like a few with different companies, but there's one personality that is always like, people are like surprised and like, oh no, that's not me. And that was always like funny to see because they kind of told us ahead of time. And we had to get other people to, do a test to say what we were going to be. And stuff. So anyways, that's the starting of my interest in this area. And it's definitely, a heightened interest since then, reading different books on them in bookshelf right up here in the office. That still stays top of mind for me. But what are some things that you like touch on and how did you even get started in this space that you mentioned from a point of burnout? I think many of us have been there or are close to there and trying to balance that, keeping the battery full, all while managing a lot of things around emotions. As much as we say it's not, it's just business is often a thing said. And I always think that's so funny. I'm like, that's not true. These are people's livelihood. They spend all day doing it. Like it's not really just business at the end of the day. It's people's lives, and they're often tied, to a company or a job or whatever they're doing. So anyways.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, it's our whole human that comes to work, right? Like our whole self that is at work or is anywhere where we go. So it's not like how it used to be where just emotions stay at home or like that stuff stays at home, because we are just who we are essentially. So there's much less compartmentalization now. And I mean, it's less so about like the personality trait specifically, but more about understanding how emotions communicate with us because they actually contain so much information, which is missed a lot of the time. And it can just be really insightful for ourselves in terms of how we communicate with other people and also how other people then communicate with us, right? So like say you jump into a meeting and like you're having a really shitty morning, you like burnt your toast and like you're just running late and you're just having a really, really rough morning and you get into this meeting and everyone's like, hey, how are you doing? And you're like, good, how are you? And you just are like suppressing. Like how many times in a day are we asked that question? How are you? I'm good. How are you? But it's
absolutely
like we're just trained and then rewired and like reinforced to actually ignore how you're doing. In any given moment. Like it's such a reactionary response now that we've lost that skill to actually even check in and like ask ourselves, oh, how am I doing? because when you have had a rough morning, you're showing up a lot more, as I say, spicy in a meeting. Like you're going to be a lot more snappy. And we just underestimate that, because when we know that and acknowledge it for ourselves, then we can say, okay, I'm not going to, like, I'm just going to be a bit more strategic in how I communicate in this meeting, or I'm going to be a bit more, like kind of
Right.
controlling the emotion, I guess, in that way. And then your teammates can also just cut you a bit of slack, or like be a bit more kinder or understanding. Maybe your manager's got to give you some tough feedback, right? They can just be a bit more strategic around that. So, yeah, I mean, it really came from my journey of hitting burnout. It was about 10 years ago now. I was living and working in Toronto. I had like the checklist life, parents tell us, get a good job, get a good like living situation, have a good partner. Like I had all the things. I had like an apartment downtown, had a good job in HR. It was my dream job, actually, which just makes this all the more sad and real, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just started coming home from work every day with a lot of stomach pain. And I did lots of tests with doctors, and they were like, you have IBS, just live next to a toilet for the rest of your life. I was like, I'm 24. Like I can't do that. And I don't understand how I'm so sick.
Right.
Like I followed the rules, you know?
Right. I did everything correct
Yeah.
according to the
I followed
playbook
the
of life.
rules. I should be
Yeah.
happy. Um, and uh, I went to see a naturopath, and ultimately was told that this was stress. And then
Right.
I'm like, there's no way I'm stressed. I'm 24. I'm living in Toronto, have my dream job, life here, had a good partner at the time. Everything was lining up as it should have been, and
Right.
it didn't make sense. And then obviously, like, we ignore how we feel. So I'm like, I'm not stressed. I have nothing to be stressed about. So ended up
Yeah.
being like a mismatch of values from myself and the organization, the work I was doing, having a micromanager, not sleeping
Right.
well, like a whole trickle effect of things. And so
Yeah.
I quit, moved back across the country to Calgary, and took some time off to just reevaluate my goals and my direction and where I was going, and what I really wanted to achieve in my life and where I missed the mark, essentially. So it was like a whole rebuilding of
Cool.
everything, of like my own checklist, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah. So I went on to do a 10-day silent meditation course to learn how to meditate.
Cool.
Tim Ferriss, you Tim Ferriss fan? Heard of Tim Ferriss?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know
So
if I can reference like anything directly, but I know that I follow him on social media and
yeah,
like all the posts and stuff in there. So
yeah,
familiar enough with it, but don't put me in the spot to like quote
yeah.
anything.
No, no. Well, I mean, he's all about like optimization, right, of your life and kind of
Yeah.
efficiency. And I'd listened to a ton of his podcasts back then, and everyone he interviewed would talk about meditation and mindfulness, and I just heard so much about it, but I hadn't really reaped the benefits from my Calm app or the Headspace app, and
Cool.
it wasn't really working. Like I just couldn't wait till those 10 minutes were over. I was just stewing and waiting for the for the meditation to be done. So I went to this meditation course, this 10 days in silence. I thought it would be helpful to cut all the noise and the distraction and just focus on learning one skill. So it was either like go to Mexico and have a vacation or go and sit in silence for 10 days over New Year's and try something different. So I did that,
Very
and
cool.
it was really impactful. And then that kind of unlocked a whole lot of emotions within me and understanding and like self insight and self awareness. And then I went on to find the mindfulness and EI course that was developed at Google. So it's called Search Inside Yourself. And I took the course, and then I became a teacher of the course. So I'm the only certified teacher in Alberta now to deliver that program. And it really gives a whole lot of structure and neuroscience as well around mindfulness and emotional intelligence. So it helped me make sense of my life and my feelings and my struggles. And that's why and how I now share it with others.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I have so many questions. We're not worried about any questions now. That is okay. So the thing about the 10 days in silent, I have a few about that one. If we could jot
Yeah,
it down, was that
totally.
not that really matters where it was, but where was it for that? Was it
Yeah,
local?
it was in Youngstown, so it's about 3 hours drive from Calgary. It's like halfway between Calgary and and Edmonton, apparently.
Oh,
So
okay, cool.
yeah,
Okay,
they have
so
centers all over the world actually to do this course.
okay, neat. And did you just like live at this place in silence for 10 days?
Basically, yeah. They put you
Cool.
up. You take your own like bedding and clothes and all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
yeah, they feed you. And the interesting kind of kicker is that it's free. So it's really like there's no barriers. It's like if you want to do it, like if you're a go-getter and like you want to learn something
Hmm.
new or dive into the depths of your mind, um, and get some hard reality checks, like it's all accessible, which I love.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's donation run. So basically, once you've been through the course, and if you enjoyed it and want to pay it forward, right, to help
Wanna,
others
yeah, yeah.
also access it, and it's all run by volunteers. So I went back a little while later. I think it was about 2 years later, and served. So I volunteered there for about 5 days in the course and was in the kitchen cooking, and then I went back and did a second 10-day sit as well. Actually, like right in January of 2020, before before everything shut down. So I
Very
got in the
cool.
second course. Yeah.
So what was could you dive in, like, share a little bit? Seems like that was kinda like a pivotal point in from what I'm hearing, this so far
Mhm.
in your storyline here, but what did you kinda, like, discover in that process? I That would be very difficult. I love to talk given we're on a
Sure.
podcast,
Yeah.
but I know, like, I have definitely benefited from either, like, shorter minute, like, I call it, like, meditating, but yoga is not really about the fitness aspect for me, it's about putting down the phone and being quiet for an hour. And I
Mhm.
love that. Or being in my sauna for a bit, and like it's too hot that you can't touch anything. You're kind of forced to be
Yeah.
that. I find those things meditative, or even cycling for myself. But 10 days of silent, like,
Yeah.
did it go in stages? Yeah, how did that play? I'll let you answer. I'm excited to hear
It's kind of
it.
wild. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty wild. It was as intense as it sounds. Like there's no journaling or writing or reading or like laptops, no phones, literally
Wow.
nothing. They even encourage you not to like you can do light stretching in your room, but there's no yoga. They really want you to give this practice a very fair chance to show it what it can, do for you and how it can impact you. So there were
Yeah.
definitely stages, a lot of insights around the main thing is like observing your own mind. So taking a bit of a back seat and just like watching your mind. You'd be like, is that what I think? Or is that how I've been
Right.
operating? And it's a very different experience to how we are in everyday life, I guess. And then the other element of
Yeah.
it is building this skill of equanimity, which is being neutral and kind of level-headed to everything. So we're not reacting to things and we're
Very
not trying to
cool.
push away things that we don't like and we're not trying to pull in the things that we do like because then
Right.
it's also it's skewed, right? And then you don't learn how to manage or handle any type of feeling or sensation. And it was really science-based too because every this is what's so cool. I think it's super cool. So every emotion has sensation. Every emotion comes up inside and it arises and it passes. And it will come up in whether it's like an itch or, like a tight chest or a tight back, tight jaw when we're stressed, or if you're relaxed and you like your body just feels more relaxed, right? But
Right.
emotions and sensations are communicating with us. So part of the practice is a body scan and you pay attention to each like little square centimeter, millimeter on your body. And then when you go back through the body scan, that specific spot will feel different. So it's like proving to us that everything changes literally in your body at every second. So why are we so attached to anything? Because everything is impermanent, including every little molecule on our body. It's like so trippy, but so cool. So
Okay.
cool. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
neat. So I'm just saying that, like, obviously 10 days silence, that'd be a challenge, but then there's no writing. There's kind of like limited whatever. So what did you do?
Mm. Yeah. So you meditate for 10 hours a day. You
Okay.
change from either like a central hall that everybody's meditating in or meditating in your room. There's obviously time for like breakfast and lunch. There's no dinner. And then you can go outside for a little bit of a break or a bit of a walk. I went in winter, so it was like mad cold. So I didn't spend much time outside, but a little bit. And that's
Yeah.
it. And then you get bored a lot. But then when you're bored, you either have the option to like daydream, which was nice
Okay.
sometimes, or or continue to work that mental muscle of meditation that we're working on and continue
Totally.
practicing because you can only get stronger then. So it was really like an interesting
Huh.
push of you literally have nothing else to do. So are you going to waste your time or are you going to use it? How are you going to use it rather? Because I get like daydream is not
Right.
necessarily wasteful, but how are you going to use your time? How are you going to be intentional
Right.
about it?
Very interesting. I could
Yeah.
see it going through like different, as you kind of mentioned too, like waves while doing that.
Hmm.
What position
Yeah.
were you sitting or were you laying down for this?
Yeah. You're sitting. You're sitting the whole
Okay.
time. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be tricky.
Definitely
Can you lay
once
down?
we,
I would want to lay down.
mm,
I feel
not
like I want to be like
recommend
yoga.
Shavasana.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just chill. Just chill on that, like on the mat. That would be
Yeah.
more, I think, my preferred
Yeah. No, it's not
meditating.
part of the practice. You do need to be sitting up because it's quite clear that they direct it to be so that you're comfortable, but you're also very alert and aware. So you're like locked in, right? Like lying down is more of a sleeping position. So
That is fair.
um yeah, it definitely it works your physical strength and your mental strength too. Like my back was feeling it for sure. But then, that's also just connected to like mental strength and physical strength, and also how you mentally
Yeah,
process feelings of pain and emotion and all of the pieces that connect to it. And then also how you process what's actually happening. Because there was a point where, yeah, I'm like, is this just like a prison? Like, did I just lock myself up in this for 10 days? Like, what did I do here?
right.
Um, so it was quite interesting that way, and definitely different mental stages of questioning, yeah, my existence, my being, like how I operate in a
Totally.
day-to-day life, like what values I have, how I live those values, how I put them into action.
Right.
Gave a lot of time and space to think and then view the thoughts, which is an interesting like capacity to have your mind in, because we never sit
Yeah.
there and think about our thoughts really.
Rarely do we make that much time.
Yeah.
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 Usually I'll say it's like a rainy day at the cabin. That seems to
Mm,
be like a very easy, or maybe easy one to think of, where you're like, okay, now I'm going to read a book for a little bit and sit
yeah.
and
Yeah.
relax, have that, even like as you're kind of mentioning. That's what I think of. That's what I think a lot of people do find, like, or local to Manitoba. A lot of folks do go to cabins on weekends and stuff. And I know if the weather's
Mm,
not good, it's still has a very calming effect,
yeah.
for people's psyche. Or I could see that being
Yeah.
the way. So
Yeah. That's really
very
great.
neat.
It's kind of like we have to get out to like tranquility is a new luxury, right? We have to really be
Yeah,
so intentional to shut everything off. Cause I'm like, oh, rainy day at the cabin. Maybe I'd pop on Netflix for half the day and then like have quiet time for half the day, right? But how many people
yeah,
are really engaging in that quiet time? It's so easy to feel that. We have so many distractions.
yeah. Yes, that is very true. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't know if we missed anything in the middle of this, but like cover it if we didn't, in terms of like the 10-day thing. But like, if at the end of 10 days, what was kind of the result there? What were you thinking,
Yeah.
feeling? How did it feel, I guess, to be finished? Was it like a
It,
relief, or did you kind of get really comfortable there?
I I thought that when I thought I'd have a very hard time being silent for those 10 days.
Yeah.
And by the end, I was the last one to leave the meditation hall to actually break the silence. Like I didn't want to break it. It was very peaceful and just insightful, and I really enjoyed it overall. But it was also the most difficult thing I've ever done in my whole life that first time. So breaking the silence was very weird and
Yeah.
difficult, and also very welcome to hear other people's experiences, but very clear that we just how easy it is to get into that comparison mindset and
Right.
compare experiences and what did you gain and what did you gain and how was this and how was day 5 for you and how was this meal for you, and like we got cookies one day and it was like the most epic thing. So the simple joys, like having a
Yeah.
cookie was I will never forget that day. I will never forget that day. It was just because day 1 and 2, there's no like dessert per se. And then day 3, there was a
Okay.
cookie. I was like, oh my God, this is the best. This is what I'm here for.
Day 3 highlight cookie.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So, yeah, but then like driving
Very cool.
back and coming back to reality, I realized how overstimulated we are, how much noise
yes.
there is around us, and how much that impacts us and can harm us and distract us. And yeah, it was just a very different way of experiencing senses, I guess you could say.
No, totally. Very neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a super. I'm gonna have to take some of that offline and look into this.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool, for
Yeah, yeah,
sure.
have to share more.
And so, what after you go through that process and kind of
Mhm.
going back to like storyline, so to say, would be what happened next? So you go in silence for 10 days, and over, you realize stimulation stuff. Then, yeah, then what
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, so one of the really big insights I had through that meditation course was my relationship to time. I thought that I was somebody who like didn't waste time and was like making the most of everything. And I also realized in that course that I had been sitting on thinking about doing my MBA for 5 years. And I was like, wow, it's been 5 years I've been thinking about it, like literally doing nothing about it. So
Right.
I felt really motivated to pick up and just like try things and do things. And so I went to write my GMAT. Like I came out of that course in the meditation course beginning of January, and usually applications are due like end of March. So I had like 6 weeks to study for the GMAT. I don't know about you, but I hadn't touched long division, long multiplication since high school or something. So I'm like relearning everything. And the GMAT did not go so well. I still had submitted my application to Singapore, University of Singapore, and I just felt like the MBA was going to give me all the answers I needed to
Right.
figure out what I wanted to do with my life.
Interesting.
So then they wrote back to me and they said, we like your application, but your GMAT's pretty low. Will you redo it? And I said, yeah, hell yeah, for sure. So I restudied, I redid it. I did worse the second time.
Oh no.
I did worse second time and was like, well, my life is over. I don't know what I'm going to do. So it was really tough. I ended up, letting that go and just having to figure out another way because there was nothing else, right? So that year at least. So I started working with a
Yeah.
life coach, and actually dabbled in a couple other business ideas. Like this was before this one came up, and
Mhm.
I wanted to open a samosa shop, like a boutique
Oh,
samosa
yeah.
shop,
Cool.
and have like fun flavors and hire grandmas, and just like give them a place of community and a place of being. So like other cultures can come and learn, how to make
Totally.
samosas. And yeah, I'm a very deep
Super.
feeler. So I wanted to help other people like feel good. So I dabbled in that. A couple other sort of ideas along the way that didn't pan out or come up to anything. And then I was searching for other ways that I could help people, and just a further way from HR. I didn't want to just push paper. And
Totally.
and then I came across the Search Inside Yourself program, and it was just like this light switch went off, and it was like this undeniable alignment of I have to teach this. I have to teach this. It's just what it's meant to be. So
Very cool.
then I went on to do that.
Awesome. And that brings us to like kind of we'll call it like semi-present day. That's what's
Yes.
been going
Yeah.
on? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And where did you, like, start after you, I guess, kinda, like, got into this, like, teaching of course, I guess I'll loosely, like, say that, but,
Mhm.
get more insight from you on that. What did that journey, like, start off with, like, and who did you start helping,
Mhm.
um, through that?
Yeah, so I started in a few different directions. One of the ways I started was in bringing out workshops to places that wouldn't be your normal access point to mindfulness. So, for example, like for me, I'm not really a yoga kind of gal. I like to go to spin class. I like to lift weights. I'm like not your average like mindfulness kind of teacher in that way, or meditation teacher. So it was really important to me to bring out these tools in spaces that I would be going to, because everybody can
Right,
use this stuff. Everybody can use these tools. So I did a couple of workshops like at spin studios locally here, at gyms. I teamed up with a personal trainer, and we did like a circuit workout and then a workshop. And then I dabbled in corporate
cool.
spaces as well. Ended up following the corporate route and doing workshops there, and also one-on-ones. So either the full Search Inside Yourself program that I deliver, or shorter modules and shorter workshops, or one-on-one coaching. Yeah.
Awesome. What are some of, like, the results that people kinda give you back as feedback from taking a course like this? What are
Mhm.
people, what's the reaction, I guess, ultimately?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple of main ones. The biggest one is feeling a lot more calm and
Cool.
stronger confidence and communication skills. Like we are communicating all day long, whether it's to ourselves or to other people. And
Right,
we rarely, like, we kind of know our self talk, but we don't really
right,
know it or like work on it or adjust it. And don't have a lot of those tools to know how to handle, like, if you are feeling spicy one day, how do you communicate that in a way that is just not gonna put up defenses for other people, or your own defenses?
right.
Um, so like the confidence, communication, calm, clarity, like they all are like its own vicious cycle. So leaders feel like they can have those difficult conversations, and they can receive
Right.
feedback, and they can grow and be better, and ultimately like reach their goals, like reach the next level for them, because we haven't been taught these skills. So when you learn them, a little bit goes a long way. A little bit goes a long
Yeah,
way. Yeah.
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 And do you like, kind of in companies now, do you think it's ultimately just being, like, folks being more, like, self-aware of
Hmm.
these situations ultimately? Because I think it does bring, like, some ways, like,
Hmm.
a calming to understand, like, yeah, why
Yeah.
they're feeling away, or why, how to express it. And
Yeah.
as we kind of opened up out of the gates here, like, there's lots of emotions in business. And if, if you're coming from an HR role, a big part of some HR roles kind of depends on the company structure and stuff, but is the whole hiring and firing thing.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
difficult. How do you manage that? Or what's the, progression to get to that stage? What
Yeah.
happened? Maybe some of it's avoided altogether because
Yeah.
of some of
Totally.
those learnings too, in terms of there being, like, a either disagreement between
Hmm.
manager and employee, or owner and employee, whatever that looks like. Either way,
Yeah.
could be a
Yeah.
mutual win.
Definitely like less conflict in teams. Like
Yeah,
one of my clients, I worked with him, and then also one-on-ones with each person in his team, and they
cool.
had a bit of a thing that came up between the team members, and I ended up having sessions with them, and they self-sorted it out, so it didn't even need to get escalated to the manager. He didn't
Neat.
have to like deal with it at all. And
Right.
like one of my other clients, she was on the fence about needing to let someone go, um, on her team, and couldn't see it clearly, but essentially like you separate out the emotion from the fact, and like realize that she just felt really bad for having to let her go, and she couldn't pull the plug. So once we sorted out and dealt with her emotions and could take that not out of the picture but process them
Mhm.
and like manage them, then she could just see it a lot clearer and was like, okay, I do need to let this person go. Now let's handle how I have that difficult conversation, versus sitting and stewing on it for weeks, right? And it's like
Yeah.
sometimes emotions get in the way, and sometimes they are the way. Like, we just have to pay attention
Right.
to them and understand them. So it is all about self-awareness, and then from that self-awareness can come empathy, so how we relate to other people and connect to other people, and that's what makes us feel more confident and have more clarity on our goals and our life in a bigger picture. And that's been more of like the direction that I've been going in with some clients. So just kind of opened up a bit of a different, yeah, bit of a different space from just the workplace.
Very interesting. Yes, I like this a lot. I'm now stewing in my own brain as we're on here about where that's kind of going. Like, like old life examples about situations where you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, this probably could have used some help or some clarity on that. Because, often in workplaces, specifically some experience in startups and in tech stuff,
Yeah.
either like emotions get high within those spaces because there's lots on the line, both from just like the risk and
Mhm.
reward side of things, but also reputation,
Yeah.
egos get involved, and that causes
Yeah.
major rifts within companies and dynamics.
Yeah.
Now, there's lots of examples that come to mind. I think this is going to be such a great conversation to
Mhm.
have out there. I'm saying that as a
Yeah.
general. This is really cool.
Yeah.
What like is there certain like it sounds like you've worked with both like high level individuals, their teams. Did you find, and I mean like there's a list of look like I guess we'll call them like logos on the thing here, not to put anything on the spot, but is it lots of like what size of companies were you working with ultimately within the space? I know it's kind of evolving too. We'll definitely chat
Mhm.
about that for more the individual side, but on the corporate side, what did that look like for when you really, were leaning into this
Mhm.
side of things? And yeah,
Yeah, definitely around kind of the sweet spot was like 50 to 100 people. Uh,
mm,
that way, I'm like the most integrated into an organization and can kind of have my hands in lots of different teams and then
mm,
bring forward insights and patterns and trends as well, like to the CEO to be like, this is what your leadership team is struggling with, right? And so when those things get resolved, leadership team
right,
is more aligned, just like everything else flows, right? So that's been more the sweet
right,
spot. I've definitely worked with some very small organizations and some very large ones too.
yeah,
And yeah, run like company wide meditations, company wide
cool,
workshops, in different spaces, like 300 to 500 people. So it's been a range. It's been a range for sure.
very cool. How long does your program usually last for within a company? Is it like a week-long journey, so to say, or is it like a couple of days? What does that look like?
Yeah. So the Search Inside Yourself program specifically is 6 modules, about two
Okay,
and a half hours per time. So about 6 weeks for like live delivery, and then you get practices emailed to you every day for a month
cool.
to kind of like reinforce that habit.
Damn, boom,
Otherwise, yeah, otherwise some clients have had like custom sessions. So, 3 workshops here and then like 3 meditations, or like basically whatever objective we're working towards, I'll put together like a custom package for them. So it's kind of dependent that way. Usually
totally,
one-on-ones have been like a year long. So I'll work with, a
very cool.
manager like twice a month or once a month, to keep that momentum going and to have those like regular check-ins and regular progress. Yeah.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense. I've taken other like training programs as I'm reflecting now, and they're probably like a month or 6 weeks, and that is probably the most effective
Mm,
length of time. Same thing with like modules and stuff like that for having that. So that makes a lot of sense
mhm.
for
Yeah.
how that program would run too. There's some
Yeah.
consistency within that sticking in our coconuts for different lengths of time
Yeah.
that you get
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
expose to it. So
Yeah. It's not like a one and done kind of thing. And I think that's a
yeah,
challenge. It's like you can't
totally,
just fix stress or like burnout in a 1 hour session.
totally.
So there needs to be a bit more depth there and consistency and repetition because people need help, right? So we need to keep that top of mind.
Yeah,
So it's reinforcing that habit and like rewiring our brain because we've been a certain way for X number of years, right? And that's been what's been wired in our brain. That's why habits are habits, and we have to
totally.
kind of reshift those. So it takes time.
Yeah, no doubt. No, that is really cool. And so how about, and then we fast forward to like today, we'll say,
Yeah.
we're talking about this before, so a little bit more of like a corporate feel prior, but now it sounded, as we are chatting before, I'm not gonna dance around it, but you know, who you're working with today, more on individual side of things, and what does that person look
Mhm.
like? And wait, we should take a step back. I had a question before that. I had to just look down to double
Sure.
check what I wrote. But at what stage were these like companies finding you? Were they like having it like, you mentioned one place kind of self-resolved an issue, but were they like finding you at a place where they're like, hey, like we've had a good growth, we want to reinvest, or is it kind of like, hey, we're stalemated, we might need some help,
Mhm.
let's bring
Mhm.
this in, or maybe a combination of both, depending on the company. I'm sure some want to always invest in the future and be top
Mhm.
in there, but
Yeah. Yeah, so the larger orgs, usually they're pretty set up and have a lot of their own processes and things going that way. The
yeah,
sweet spot, like the 50 to 100 orgs, usually they didn't even have HR at the time. They didn't
right,
have a lot of structured learning or support.
yeah,
So, but they had like decent culture, but they really like a lot of them were mission driven organizations. So they care about their
right,
people and they genuinely want to help them.
mhm,
Um, so they're early-ish, like kind of startups, but not like super startup, like a little bit into their journey, but they're
yes,
ready for like kind of the pre-growth. They need to get their people ready and like not burnt out and equipped with tools so that when it is go time, everybody's like same page, same like kind of lingo that they're talking about, same alignment, the way that they're speaking about things too. Like some of the practices we integrated were then in every single meeting. You know how like in industrial organizations they have like the health and safety moment in the beginning, right? This is like
yep,
a
yep,
mindfulness moment in the beginning, or an arrival practice, like an emotional intelligence check-in, so that everybody's on the
oh,
same page at the beginning of a meeting, and the leader knows how each person is doing, so they can tailor their approach a little bit, or just being
very cool,
considerate, right, of how everyone
yeah,
is doing. So the whole organization was at that level, and then when growth comes in, it's like this is just how we operate here, and this is what makes us awesome. This is how we stay awesome and how we grow and not lose top talent, right? And have leaders
totally,
who are aligned and um,
yeah.
calm and can like handle stressful situations without flipping their lid and like can just stay rational, you know?
Yeah. Super relatable. The work history. I mean, yeah, I mean, once you have a really good leader that you've worked with, if you haven't yet and you're listening or whatever, you might just be going through a phase. But once you end up having that very calm leadership, then it brings to light this is how
Yeah.
it's supposed to be versus maybe how other folks, had or have reacted to different things. Well, I shouldn't
Mhm.
like laugh like that. Well, a lot of people I work for are very good about managing that stuff. Just depends how rocky it got for
Yeah,
out of their own control, different things, supply chain issues with different companies and stuff. Um,
totally.
but yeah, there certainly were moments where I'm kind of thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm sure many people listening have had those moments either with their manager or they are a manager, and maybe they would have learned from those too. Because I'm
Mhm.
sure that there is, as much as after going through different things on my end, just sharing this on the table here is, you have moments as an employee and then later on now running a company or two. And, you reflect on how you would improve on those, both on your own reaction, but also like if there was a
Yeah.
potentially better reaction from a manager, what would you do differently? So a lot of those really good lessons came from having so experiences, we'll say,
Yeah.
yeah, either way. So
Yeah.
kind of, well,
I laugh
and
because I
not
relate.
yeah. Well, I was thinking from partly what you were saying there too, is like, yeah, there's definitely been some experiences in your past that,
For
even
sure.
when life seemed to be peachy, sun shining from, all angles, it's there's still, yeah, stresses in there. And,
Mhm.
micromanagement, I'm sure, is one of the topics that you kind of unpack within that too, because that's never a healthy situation
Right.
for anyone, right? Just lack of planning or whatever. That's how I kind of call it. But
Mm.
without that plan, that creates a weird micromanagement
Mhm.
environment. That is not good. That everyone fails
Yeah.
because of, very likely. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I found that a lot of because I've worked with some micromanagers because they don't want to be micromanagers anymore. Um,
right,
is it's a lot of releasing the need for control, right? Like that's
right,
their safety. That's how they feel like they need to do a good job. But it's not. Like, it's actually very detrimental. And so that's the thing, is a lot of
Cool.
leaders I work with, like, they want to be better, but they just don't know how, and they haven't been given these skills in life or otherwise. Like, I don't really care about
Yes.
statistics and like stuff from university. It's fine. But it's interesting because when my degree was in business and specialized in HR, and I learned all the 360-degree reviews and all the, all the processes, but people are not processes. Like, I got into the workforce then and was like, what is this text? Sure, the textbook is fine, but like, I wasn't taught how to communicate and handle my emotions and my feelings and
Yeah.
how we just express that. So there's a lot of people out there who want to do better and are trying to, but listening to podcasts can only take you so far, right? Like, you have to
Totally.
put in the action, and that's where a lot of them struggle, because they just don't know what
Yeah.
action and how to actually do it. And then realizing that everything literally comes back to our emotions. Like, the reason you might be procrastinating something is because you can't have a difficult conversation because you're afraid of how that makes you feel. So you got to deal with your own feeling. And then once you know how to handle that and control it and process it, then you can have a bunch of difficult conversations, and it's just much less of a big deal. It's much less stressful. You're not losing sleep
Totally.
over it. You're not overthinking it,
Yeah.
because you can just see it clearly. So it all actually comes back to us individually, and we need those skills.
100%. No, I'm making mental lists right now as we're talking about this. I think it's actually one of the biggest things that's probably missing from a lot of entrepreneurials, like skill sets and on their tool belt, I'll call it.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of other things that a lot of like, I'll say us in general, entrepreneurs, folks out on their own, or small medium sized business leader, and I mean right at the top, bigger companies too, that we all share. And a lot of it is like risk tolerance and length of time you're willing to take that risk for too, if it is your own startup in that case. But a lot
Yeah.
of folks do not know how to manage the emotions behind that, right? Like, how are you going to react
Yeah.
in a whatever it is. And I would say some of the time, but not all the time, because many of the stresses we're kind of talking about are more person to person. But what
Mhm.
is it like when you have a different financial stress because of a deadline, or you don't get paid from a client, or
Yeah.
like, how are you managing that conversation and the emotions around that? Like, where are you guiding that? There's no, or not that I know of anyways, specific playbook that will cover all of these things.
Right.
Because either you've learned from experiences or witnessing someone else maybe along the way, which might
Mhm.
not be the right way to do it.
Mhm.
If you're talking to someone, and I would probably guess, like, to like demographic wise, we haven't even talked about it, but I'm guessing some of like older generations, like learning down, did things a lot differently than we're
Mhm.
approaching things in kind of like a new era of business. Like, to be able to like talk about this
Yeah.
stuff with a lot of leaders, I'm sure that there was leaders in there that, like you said, knew that there was an issue, didn't really know what to do. This came
Yeah.
up, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the missing thing, once they've gone through the experience, right? And they're like, I'm sure it was a big relief to be able
Mhm.
to listen and talk through how to manage emotions in
Yeah.
there. So yeah.
Exactly. It's like, how do you handle the discomfort of not getting paid, or having the
Yeah,
difficult conversation, or right, like, or even selling when you don't have enough clients? How do you
totally.
handle the discomfort of like pressure selling, or like
Yeah, yeah.
desperation, right? Like, when things get
Yep.
tricky, these are real moments. Like, how do we handle those? And that's like, do you take it out on your partner at home? Do you take it out on your dog? Do you like take it out on yourself? Like, what coping
Totally.
mechanisms do you have in place? And then that's where
Yep.
our habits kick in, right? Like, we naturally go to one habit when we're feeling this particular way.
Yeah.
Why do we go to those habits or coping mechanisms? Because
Hmm.
we don't know how else to cope with it. So we just resort to what's easy. And food is a
Yeah.
really big one for people, right? Obviously, like booze, like
100%.
these
Oh
are
yeah.
all things that
Yeah.
are out there. And it's like, how can we just be more intentional about the use and how we engage with things and how we use things? And yeah, it's just like, just bring more self-awareness to it, right? And then you can communicate or come from a place of choice and responding versus reacting or feeling really compelled. And that happens in our brain too. Like when we're in a very emotional situation, our amygdala just takes over, and the amygdala is like the emotional part of the brain.
Yes.
Like the prefrontal cortex is just like, peace out, and the amygdala is like, I'm here, and it just takes over, and then you're hooped. You can't, like, if you can't re-engage your prefrontal cortex, like you're toast. That situation is going to be one that you regret. So how can you bring
Interesting.
it back? And that is a moment right
Yeah.
there. If you have two of those, maybe even one, maybe your top talent is just like, I'm out. I'm not dealing with this. And they just leave. Like it can be so like seemingly small, but
Right.
that becomes a habit. And then that's how you operate.
Totally. Well, I think that's very reflective too. Like, I mean, seeing some organizations where they have very high churn rates could be for other reasons, but I would think in some of those cases when I see just outside in observing, I'm trying to keep this like neutral, but observing companies that have had like higher churn rates and stuff, it's like, I'm guessing it's leadership. I'm guessing all these people are not terrible at their jobs. And now they're probably looking for, a job, or they were promised one thing, but it looks very different behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
There.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, like what's that like? Also probably not a place I would explore anyways.
Yeah.
And this is prior life situations where you're kind of like looking for jobs, you're just looking at things, and those are some of the things that I observed anyways outside, and I'm like, probably not a good idea to go down that path,
Mm-hmm.
even though it may look like a good company and stuff. But
Yeah.
what would be like, I've seen as you were saying that about like different parts of the brain, I'm not going to quote you on that, and
Yeah.
reaction time, I saw this post and it just popped right in my head. It was like, by waiting 20 minutes to send that email probably saves you, so I don't know what it was, but I mean, you can only do that so many times for waiting before sending stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So outside of just taking 20 minutes to potentially cool off from stuff and without spilling the whole course, I don't think we could do that. But what would be one tip you could leave
Mm-hmm.
a listener to try to manage that battle internally about that reaction that they might have?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So I share a lot of micro practices through all my work because we don't always have those 20 minutes. We have like a split
Right.
second, right? And
Yeah.
so one is having that self-awareness around how anger or frustration feels in the body. So emotions come up in our body before our brain makes sense of it. There's a bit of a
Right.
gap there. So if you can get a bit closer to the time of like, oh my God, my shoulders are like this, or like my head is hot, literally hot. That is just step one to like step away from the computer for 4 seconds. Or even to just recognize I'm really spicy right now. I'm really heated.
Right.
And then if we can like get there and have that awareness around it, a practice that I share a lot is a 3 breath practice. So on the first breath is to just become aware of your breath. So like recognize, okay, I'm breathing right now.
Okay.
The
And I'm
second is
doing it
to,
with you here too.
yeah, the second is to relax the body. So like letting the shoulders drop or the jaw loosen. It's usually first
Okay.
place of tension. And
Yes.
then the third breath and the third piece is to ask yourself, what's important now?
Yes.
And then it could be like responding to this email without being a jerk is what's important. Or
Right.
getting my message across, Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
Chat
really great
GPT.
way. Pardon?
Chat GPT, let's do it firm
Chat.
but not aggressive. Help me out here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a way to like literally bring our prefrontal cortex just slightly back online. That's all you need is just a little bit to kind of regulate a bit and recognize, okay, my amygdala's fired up. I'm not going to let it call the shots here. It can be emotional. I can feel angry or pissed, and I can also not flip my lid on this person, right? Like both can exist.
Very cool. I mean, thank you very much for sharing that too.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's a lot more to like the in-depth process you go through the 6 week piece there. But I think
Yeah.
if folks can take something like that away, and it's not the 20 minutes, it's 4 seconds, 3 breaths. I
Yeah.
think that's super empower. Hopefully, will be
Mhm.
really impactful for someone to hear that is
Yeah.
wondering about how can I better manage that if they already know that it's something that's not being managed well,
Yeah.
in their situation because of many stresses and how we manage those emotions in business. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
Hmm.
What would be, and I guess like, how are you connecting with folks and how are they connecting with you? I know that we've connected now on all the socials, but what is the preferred method for how do they get in touch and what's the best process for setting up, yeah, get you to come into a business or meet with someone like that? What would be the preferred
Yeah,
method that you'd recommend someone to do that for?
for sure. The best is LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, or my Instagram at tjams is the two best places to connect with me.
Okay, awesome. We'll have that posted, listener, on the write up if you're listening right now for that side of things. And what I guess from like point of like conversation, this might be a weird question about like process, but from point of contact and then getting going with you, what does that normally look like if someone's looking to get on right away? Obviously, the more time, the better on that side. So
Yeah. So the process of how we work together, you mean?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, once you reach out, we'll set up a quick call to just discuss, some of the challenges you're facing. What are your goals? What are your aspirations? What are you hoping to achieve? We'll just assess if we're a good fit, and then and then we decide if we're working together for 1 month or 3 months. If we're doing kind of like one-on-one work,
okay,
and then we get rolling pretty quick. Usually, we get rolling pretty quick. Usually, 60-minute sessions, and then also just access to me throughout that whole time because, as we've talked about, we need to
yeah,
implement those strategies in the moment. So, kind of accessible
100%.
real time. And then, in the workplace, depending on what kind of workshops we're looking at and kind of scheduling that way, we still have that initial chat to just discuss what's going on at the organization and the teams. And then, and then we get things scheduled and roll out that way.
Cool, awesome. And
Yeah.
then who are you working with now, and what does that look like for you currently?
Hmm. Yeah. So now I am working with, there's still leaders in the mix there for sure. It's just kind of expanded and also streamlined at the same time to individuals who are mostly kind of like the goal getters, like those who are really ambitious, driven, looking to reach their next level and kind of make their dreams into goals and then goals into reality. It's a lot of what
Yeah, yeah,
I've been doing in my own life. A really big goal for me was to remote work, and I managed to do that for 4 months last year and had some fun expeditions around the world, which was pretty awesome. And a lot of that came from my insight of understanding what makes me happy and what makes me feel good and having clarity around my goals and my direction. So that's something I've been working on a lot of clients with, whether it is they're gunning for that next promotion, or they're looking to set up their own business, or they're just like really stuck and don't really know what direction they're going in. Usually it's because they're burnt out or burning out, and we kind of, calm the mind, calm the body, find some clarity, and then build confidence. So those are the main types of kind of things that we're working on. And I usually end up working with a lot of people who are also deep feelers, kind of like the empaths. So we struggle with people pleasing and saying yes all the time, and just kind of
yeah,
overextending, which leads into the burnout. I hear that sigh of like, yeah, I feel that.
totally. Yeah, no, you definitely did. Well, I think, and it's probably very common within folks that are running companies. We always want to say yes because we
Yeah,
want to appease and please clients, partner, whatever, whoever that is within the business side of things, or even our
yeah,
employees or folks that work with us. Um, Always trying to like be there for them and yeah, be the most.
yeah. And we care, right? Like a lot of
Yeah,
people care. That's the thing, is those who are not just wanting the average life. Like you're really like designing your life and you're gunning for that next level, but unsure like how to make it happen. That's a lot of the space that I've been digging into more and helping people with more.
very
So
cool.
coming out of just getting more into how you actually want to live your life versus the checklist. Like create your own checklist, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing in 2024.
Yeah, totally. But it is very rewarding to, I guess, like work through that life's list if you have set one up early enough on, or whenever
Mhm.
you do set it up for that. But then that comes with pressure.
Yeah,
and wanting
absolutely.
it to happen within
Yeah,
certain time constraints too, which is not always aligned with
right.
the reality of it, because you can't force some stuff, such as the growth of your business. And or that's my experience anyways.
Yeah.
Some of it just takes time. You
Yeah,
can't force
exactly.
it. So
And then we manage the
yeah.
emotions around it, so you're good.
Well, try. Yeah, I say that after
Yeah,
probably being someone who's trying to, push that along, but just realizing, I think sometimes that's not always the
yeah,
case, but that comes from experience. So
for
yeah.
sure.
Wow. Okay, cool. This was good. Um, yeah. Anything else that you want to throw in here or mention? 'Cause this is
No.
great here. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm good.
I think so. Yeah,
This has
thanks for
been
having me. It's
super
been a
great.
pleasure.
I really appreciate you making time to be on here. And this was awesome. I know that there's going to be follow up from this episode with folks. Absolutely. So we'll make sure to have all your contact stuff in there. And thanks so much for making time to be on today.
Yeah,
Really
my
enjoyed it.
pleasure.
There's going to have to be a 2.0
I'm
already.
down. I'm ready.
So
For sure.
that's awesome. Well, great. Thanks again. And we will talk more soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.